Hey everybody, Dan John here. I'm not in a black polo. Means something special just happened. Hey, listen, after I did the video on Coach Maughan, I wrote a little piece highlighting all of the points I've learned from Coach. And there's so much more, but it's good enough for now. And you'll find it down here. The link is down there, okay? Thanks so much, okay? Bye-bye. I wanted to talk to you about another one of my mentors today. His name was Coach Ralph Maughan, who's really an institution at Utah State University. There's so many things he did in his career. He made the Olympic team as a hammer thrower. He won the national championships as a javelin thrower. He was drafted and then injured playing football for the Detroit Lions. He was a great basketball player. He was an All-American softball player. And then, of course, during World War II, he was at the Battle of the Bulge, was wounded twice and received, I believe it was a Silver Star for what he did. So when Coach Maughan started in the early 1950s at Utah State, he was already a legend there. In his spare time, he told me one time he got a master's degree in mathematics because he just wanted to keep his hands in education. A master's in mathematics for fun, that's pretty impressive. When I was in high school, my freshman year, my brother Richard and his wife Diane took me to Track and Field News, and I bought a book called the Track and Field Omnibook. And in that book, it talked about Coach Maughan and about Utah State discus throwing. And I came home and I told my sister, Goreen, I said, I want to throw the discus for Ralph Maughan at Utah State University. You know, being a 13-year-old, those pretty high aspirations. Probably the proudest moment of my life was my sophomore year at junior college when my dad called up to me and said, Dan, there's a phone call for you. My dad loved it when the head coaches would call. And I went and I picked up the phone, and what I heard was, I'm Coach Ralph Maughan from Utah State University, and I'd like to offer you a full ride. So sometimes your goals come true. Coach Maughan was a wonderful human being. He died tragically July 3rd, 2006, which is also my mother's and father's anniversary. And when I heard about it, Tiffany told me, my wife Tiffany said, well, he's playing cards in heaven with your mom and dad. And I thought that was lovely. What I'd like to share with you is some lessons Coach Maughan taught me that really are the foundation, not so much for how I coach. You'll hear it's how I coach, but how I do my life. There are so many levels to this stuff that it really is important that I'll tell you the lesson, and then the next thing I'll have to do is go, oh boy, there's so much more I want to say, but I can't say it all today. So lesson number one, Coach Maughan at his desk had a little sign, and it said, be reasonable, do it my way. And after I go through his list of his accomplishments, when I got to Utah State, the world record, the American record, the Canadian record, and the collegiate record were all held by Utah State Aggies, which is pretty impressive. So as a discus thrower, you might want to pay attention to the guy who coached the world record, the American record. And it's a tough lesson, but it's true sometimes. If you decide to follow a great coach, a great mentor, it might be wise to occasionally shut up and follow what this person is trying to tell you. Honestly, historically, I look back, and the biggest mistakes I made in college was not listening to Coach Maughan. I overtrained in the weight room. I didn't do enough hill sprints or stadium steps, and I burned the candle at both ends. I'm going to say something that's very strange to you, but my junior year, I got hit in the head with a discus, and it was worse. It's worse than I thought it was. I've had a problem with concussion issues since that day, and that was in 1978. But what happened after that is basically I quit. I couldn't do anything. And when I returned for my senior year, I did exactly what Coach told me to do. And I had, according to Coach Maughan, the best year in the history of any Utah State University athlete, which is high praise. So finally, doing it his way turned out to be the right thing. The second one, I remember him telling this a lot, but I really remember it the first time. He said, number 2, make yourself a slave to good habits. And I always wondered, when you're in a room of Division I track and field athletes, almost by definition, you're in a room with people who have pretty good habits. There was no professional track and field, and to be honest, few people make a living doing professional track and field. So we all knew we were there to get an academic degree, get a college education, move ahead. For some of us, like in my case, my parents didn't go to college. My parents never even thought about going to university or college. So by the time Coach Maughan said that to me, I had good habits. Recently had a conversation with somebody, and I said something I thought was normal. There's a thing called cutting class or sloughing or whatever they call it where you're from. That's where you choose not to go to a class. Never, not one time in my entire life, did I ever miss a class to go do something fun. Now, I missed classes to go to track meets or because I was sick or something, but never for fun. Never. Not once. And this person who was a high school boy said, well, I do it all the time. And I thought to myself, and that's why I have a little bit more, I had more success than you in high school. Make yourself a slave to good habits. My 3-part formula is show up, don't quit, ask questions. But really the key is make yourself a slave to good habits. Showing up is a habit. Not quitting is a habit. And it's so clear to me when I say something like that it makes me want to laugh out loud. The third thing he taught me, and this, of course, is the thing that my whole career is based on. I sat down in his office the first day I got to Utah State, and I asked him a couple questions. His success formula was very short. Little and often over the long haul. This is the day he told me famously that you should throw the discus 4 days a week, lift weights 3 days a week for the next 8 years. You want to make money, if you want to have a nice retirement, save a little bit every week, for 30 or 40 years. If you want a good relationship, tell the person I love you every day for 40 or 50 or 60 years. Good parents follow this naturally. You can't cram in 363 bad days of parenting into a 2-day vacation at Wally World or something. It is still the foundation of how I coach and how I think about everything. It was interesting, and I'm going to read this because this comes from the USTCA Quarter Review, October 1967, when he went through how we trained at Utah State. During the months of July, August, and September, our throwers work entirely on their own. I still think that's a good idea. From October until January, we have a program of lifting weights on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We work on the discus form on Tuesday and Thursday. During the winter months from January to April, at Utah State, the winter months are all year except for July. During the winter months from January to April, we are able to work indoors in our field house. We then lift on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and throw on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. During the competitive season from April to July, we lift on Monday and Wednesday, and throw Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. On the days we throw, we like to complete our practice sessions by doing sprint work consisting of 30, 40, or 50-yard sprints. That's not very fancy. It's exactly what I did for the best years of my throwing career. But the thing is, you do those little things often for a long time. Number 4 is really interesting. He had this interesting concept. He had discovered through his career that you can train hard the day before a meet, but you can't do very much 2 days before the meet. And he called this the 2-day lag rule. I have used this in my career constantly. When I coached high school football, I would always try to have an easier practice 2 days before the game. because I knew that that was going to carry over to the game. Now, when I coached sophomores and junior varsity where the game was on Thursday, that meant the really heavy day for the varsity, the Tuesday. I used to worry it's going to impact my team on Thursday, and it did. So when I train athletes, one of the things we do is, and this might be all we do for peaking, 2 days before the event, maybe all you do is warm up, do some original strength. I've kept that tradition here in my home. Every Thursday, track meets, Highland Games, weightlifting meets tend to be on Saturday, is we always do what we call Tonic Thursday. Tonic as in gin and tonic, refreshing. We always have an exceptionally easy workout every Thursday. Basically, Thursdays in the gym, we do about an hour of original strength, some flexibility, and some just general easy movements because it works. And I've noticed in my career that I can have a nice workout. When I was at Utah State, Coach Bradley, he was the New Zealand coach, he had me do 80% for a single the day before a meet. It might sound like a lot to some of you, but if you're benching 400, 80% isn't very heavy. I can't do math right now, but that's 315 on a normal bar. For one, it's like there's nothing on there. If you're, I would remember doing a 315 clean. I think it was a 225 or 245 snatch, and the workout would be done. I'd be like, how did that happen? And yet the next day, my nervous system was locked and ready to go. Phil Maffetone, in his books, the great endurance coach, basically has the same rule. And I think it's kind of interesting to see that. I see all these ridiculous peaking programs, and I always laugh at them because unless you understand the 2-day lag rule, most of what you're doing is kind of nonsense. Number 5 is something that's probably true in the throwing events and the jumping events in track and field, but I think there's a life truth into it. I'm still not ready to explain it. It is continuous acceleration. So from once you start the implement, you want to just constantly go faster and faster and faster. One of my favorite things he ever said was to Frank White, another thrower at Utah State, Frank, you need to slow down to 90 miles an hour at the start. I just thought that was hilarious. Maybe it's not. There's 2 ways to do this. You can start slow and go fast. But what Coach Maughan liked was this: start fast and go faster. This is how you learn how to get the snap going. This is how you learn how to get the snap going in your throws. Number 6, he told me once, and I keep using this quote because I think it's hilarious. I was a really good student. Okay, I know I'm bragging, but I was a really good student. And one day he said to me, if your brains were in your feet, you would throw farther. Okay, coach, ouch. But then I used this as a coach. When I coached American football, I coached defensive backs. And I'd always tell the kids, your eyes are faster than your feet, because a lot of them would just stare down at one thing versus looking away to see what was really going on. I like this poem from that J.K. Doherty used in his book. A centipede was happy quite until a frog in fun said, pray, which leg comes after which? This raised her mind to such a pitch, she lay distracted in the ditch, considering how to run. When you throw the discus, when I throw the discus, I have about 1.6 seconds before I deliver the implement. There's no time to think, and if you do think, it's nothing but bad stuff. So, Coach's insight was great there, and when I started looking over some of my other notes, I noticed his emphasis on the feet, on the feet, on the feet. If you don't mind, I'm going to pull out some notes from the Little Red Book that I talk about so often. And this is some notes I took in college talking to Coach Maughan. Start on balance. Boy, that's also the opening line of Dune, so Coach is a good company here. Number 2, think of balance. Disc out, legs wide. Turn with your feet. Upper body trails. Continuous acceleration. Not too slow a start. Feet close at the throw. Be a good athlete. I like that one. Whip your left hand. Think about the perfect throw as you're winding up. And when your technique breaks down, go home. I love that line. When things start going bad in practice, you're done for the day. I wish I would have listened to that a little closer. It ties us into a story that's kind of funny. The man just died here, but Glenn Passy was a real hero at Utah State. 178 pounds. He threw the discus 190. For my European friends, that's going to be he was 74 kilos and threw 58 meters. Well, he was so nervous at the national championships, he walked over to Coach Maughan and said, I forget how to throw the discus. And so Coach had to walk him over to a corner and go through step by step because Glenn was so nervous. He was letting this dictate to what it did with his feet. And with a happy ending, Glenn won the national championships. Number 7 is one that's really sport specific, but boy, I tell you, it's attack with the knee. Now that I understand how the glute works so much better, this thing makes more sense to me. But his idea in hurdles, pole vault, well, every event in track and field, the high jump, the long jump, the discus throw in one sense of it, the javelin throw certainly, is if you attack with the knee, you put yourself in better alignment. The next time you think about this, think about a hurdler, come up to a wall and try to throw your foot up on the wall. What you'll notice is that you lean back. But if you drive at the wall with your knee, you drive forward. And it was weird to have Coach talk about this because it was such a simple concept, but I was able to use it in every aspect of my coaching ever. To me, when you get a cue like attack with the knee, put your arms around it and use it as much as you can. Number 8 is a funny one. He said, for some athletes, competition turns the iron in their blood to lead. Coach Maughan grew up at a time where there were some great coaches. There were some historic coaches in the world. He was close friends with Bill Bowerman, the guy who invented Nike up at Oregon, Ken Shannon, of course, the great Washington coach. He was very close with Bud Winters at San Jose State, who invented the whole relax and win system, which was later copied by the Soviets and then made to be a Soviet thing. But the idea is that all of these coaches, Bowerman with his hard, easy system, obviously Winters with relax and win, and Coach Maughan, they all understood that if you tried too hard, your performance would suffer. And it was really hard to really master that because, it seems like the right thing to do. When I was growing up, you give it the old college try, win one for the Gipper. Here's the funny thing, in my coaching career and my athletic career, that crap never works. If you look at my national championship video when I win the discus, you'll see as I get in the ring, I smile. And the reason I taught myself to smile before I throw, I discuss this in the book now, it lowered my arousal level, is because if I can smile, I can throw the discus far. But if I'm all like this, now it might feel like the discus is going to go far, but it doesn't. Boy, I needed to learn to keep the iron in my blood to be just in my blood and not turned to lead. I love that line. The 9th thing I learned from Coach is a tough one because it's so obvious. If it works, it works. Coach Maughan was a great discus coach. And one of his athletes, L.J. Sylvester, went away for the weekend because his brother, L.J.'s brother, was throwing farther than him. Well, when he came back on Monday, he said to Coach Maughan, I figured out a way to throw 20 feet farther. Coach Maughan threw out everything he knew about discus throwing and said, show me. And most of the world's modern discus techniques uses the leg that we use at Utah State. When Dick Fosbury, the great high jumper, was perfecting his technique, his college coach, who later went around giving workshops telling people how to do this technique. The coach kept trying to stop him from doing it, but Fosbury went his own way. The Brits came out with a study that proved clearly that the flop was a much worse method of high jumping. Of course, in 2020, there's not a high jumper in the world who doesn't still flop. If it works, it works. Coach was around when weightlifting first showed up in track and field, and guys who lifted, threw farther, jumped higher, and ran faster. Folks, if it works, it works. In fact, that is the beauty of track and field, because it's time and distance. If something works, it works. You know, I wish most of life was that simple. And the final lesson Coach Maughan taught me, and he told our teams every year, one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make in your life is to marry well. And Coach Maughan's wife, Mrs. Maughan, Bernice, but I will go to my death, she was always Mrs. Maughan. She would go to every single track meet, and I would go up in the stands, and she would talk to me. And after a few meets, she would talk me down off the bridge. And at some meets, she would talk to me about the simplest things. And I thought we just had a special relationship until I noticed that she did that with every athlete. She talked to the athletes. And I began to get an image of, this is the kind of person I want with me in my life. Someone who will walk with me down those roads, being at the national championships. One of my favorite stories about my wife is her encouragement at the nationals for me to make a winning clean and jerk. I make it read about it in my book because she swears. These are just a few lessons from Coach Maughan. There's 10, and they all changed my life. It's interesting because having Dick Notmeyer, the great storyteller, and Coach Maughan, who didn't tell a lot of stories, was an interesting transition for me. But one day, Coach Maughan and his son-in-law, Randy Wilson, and I, Coach needed help driving because of cataracts, because of some injuries he had had in World War II. So Randy drove us up. And on the way up, Randy said something, and Coach Maughan started talking about his experiences in World War II. Randy told me later on that Coach never talked about it. I think partially because I grew up in a military family with disabled vets. I'm a safe person to talk to about these things. I know what to do, or better, what not to do. When they start talking and they get that look, that off in the distance look, you don't prod, you don't ask questions, you let them talk. And Coach shared some stories about the Battle of the Bulge that were absolutely brutal. And I think that one of the reasons Coach wasn't, he was funny and he was kind and he had great one-liners, but he wasn't the storyteller, is because I think I could see that day in his eyes. There was a lot more going on back there. Bernice told me one time that he still struggled at night with things from the war. The World War II vets didn't talk about it a lot publicly, but I know my dad and uncles spent a lot of time in rooms talking about things. So maybe that was a difference. I don't know. If you ever get a chance to go to Utah State University, the stadium is Ralph Maughan Stadium, and deservedly so. When he died, he was called the greatest Aggie, and there's no question in my mind that's true. I hope these stories and these lessons help. I'm Dan John, and I'm here to help.